Today has to have been the worst time of my life, even more than when my parents died. Due to events I could not prepare for, Dashie found out the truth before I could tell her myself. She knows what she is, a made-up cartoon character from a kids' TV show. She's mad. No, upset beyond all thought. She had locked herself in her room, but I know my daughter. She didn't stay in there for long. She opened her window and flew off, probably into a tree to soak in her sorrow. I'm a monster. I should have told her sooner. I just wasn't sure when would be the right time. Now, we are both suffering from my carelessness. I thought getting cable would be a good thing, giving her some more shows to watch. But what I didn't realize was that we got the hub station. I wasn't even aware it was still up. And find my surprise, the show My Little Pony is even still airing. It had stopped at 8 seasons, but still it was repeated. I remember I walked in from work with some groceries, set them in the kitchen, and walked into the living room. That's when I saw it. "Yay, she did it!" Fluttershy had screamed, jumping with joy as Applejack, Twilight, and Pinkie Pie all sat on the clouds with dumbfounded looks on their faces. My heart sank. I knew this episode. I remembered this episode. Even after seeing nothing for 12 years, I still remembered that damn episode. In that episode, Rainbow Dash performs the Sonic Rainbow, much like how my Dashie had years ago. At the time, I was still holding my keys, and I dropped them. They clanged on the wood floor. If she didn't know I was home before, she knew now. "How long?" Dashie asked me, no emotion in her voice. How long have you known about this? Dashie turned to look at me. She had been crying, and her mane was in even worse shape than normal. "How long have you known about this?" I couldn't help it. A tear ran down my cheek as she yelled at me. This was the first time in all these years she had raised her voice to me, and I deserved every single bit of it. So I sat down, turned off the television, and told her everything. I told her about the show, about finding her, and answered any other questions she had for me. There were a lot. Most of them stemmed from the show, to which I simply told her what I truly believed. That though she is the Rainbow Dash from the show, that she herself is a different pony from the cartoon. I tried to explain it to her, but her bald-headedness took over as she continued to lash at me. I took it all. I deserved it. I've been keeping that horrible secret from her for far too long. She is now a fully grown mare, capable of taking care of herself if she were in Equestria. Here, I treat her still like she was my little filly. It's been wrong of me, but I couldn't help it. I didn't want this to ever happen, but I knew it would. I should have done what was right, but I didn't. It was only a matter of time before she found out, and she knew she was different. After our argument, she flew upstairs into her bedroom and slammed her door shut. I checked on her an hour later, and no response told me she had flown off. I can only hope that she comes back, or at least, if she doesn't, she stays away from any other people. If anything, I hope some sort of portal opens and she goes back to her world and never has to think of me again. All I can say to her at this point is that I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. So sad. It's been 3 days since Dashie left. The night of her departure, I did something I hadn't done in a while. I went for a walk. I wasn't sure where I was going, or how long I walked, but that's what I did. I walked. Now, 3 days later, I'm finding myself out here walking once again. I've been out for roughly 3 hours, and though it's only 5 in the afternoon, it has grown dark. A storm is brewing, and soon I will be getting hit by the brunt of it. I turn around to begin my walk home, though I don't rush. My energy these past few days have been non-existent, as I have barely eaten anything more than some toast. I feel so lost as I walk through the woods that surround my home. No, our home. It is as much hers as it is mine, and nothing will change that. The rain has begun, but I do not quicken my pace. I just walk, much like I had done so long ago. The distant memories of all my pain and sorrow before Dashie begins to seep back into my mind. I haven't had these thoughts in years. The pats of water on the trees help keep me distracted. It's a peaceful sound, one you would never hear in the city. The rain is picking up, and my shirt is now soaking wet. I'm sure I'll be sick tomorrow morning, but I don't care. I've been sick for 3 days now, a mental illness that has been tearing me apart. My daughter is somewhere out there, hurting, needing some comfort and warmth in this rain. I wish I could be there for her, even though she may not want me to. She may not ever want to see me again for how she acted. I don't blame her. It must be a horrible thing to finding out your past like that. I can't imagine what it would be like. I know Dashie's a strong mare and she can pull through, but I also know how she holds a grudge at times. I'm not sure that, even if she did come back, she would ever forgive me. Or more importantly, if I could ever forgive myself. It's now pouring out here. The tree canopies are barely holding back the torrential rain as I'm hammered by the water droplets. I stop to look around and find my bearings to return home. I'm not lost. Most of this area is easy to traverse once you get used to it. It's just I'm also looking for Dashie as I walk. It's the reason why I'm walking in the forest in the first place. I press on, keeping a steady pace through this rain. Suddenly, I spy a large, thick tree. Its stature sticks out amongst the rest, and from looking at the barely wet grass underneath, I can tell its many branches are holding back even this hard rain. I need to take a break, so I walk under the tree and sit down. The grass is barely wet, with only a few small droplets making their ways down. This is the kind of tree I'd imagine Dash would hide under in this rain. I wish it to be true, but I saw no sign of her as I approached. I close my eyes and lean against the tree hulk as I think about my life. Our life. Together as a father and daughter. We have grown so much as a family, and have been fortunate enough to have very few fights. None of them were as heartbreaking as the one 3 days ago. I feel a tear running down my cheeks as I imagine Dashie's face again. The anger in her eyes, mixed with the confusion, just tears me apart. I want so badly to make things right, or go back in time and stop it from happening. But I can't do either of those. What's done is done. I'm so sorry. I speak out loud, not caring for no one is listening. I'm alone in these woods, besides the wildlife. In this rain they are hiding as well, and the ones that aren't are far at being such as I. I'm just so sorry, Dashie. I continue to cry as I keep my eyes closed and leaning against the tree. The rain continues to pour around me. An occasional drop hits my head, but I don't care. Crack. I open my eyes from the sudden sound and look to my left. I'm shocked at what I see before me. Looking at me with teary eyes, herself, Dashie, my little Dashie, covered in birds and tree sap along her mane and tail, is standing a couple feet from me. She is wet, with both rain and tears. I hadn't heard her approach. Then again, being a Pegasus, she was very quiet and light on her hooves. This is a burden for my voice. She doesn't speak, and instead walks over to me, not caring what noises she makes under her hooves. I don't move. I just sit on the ground and watch her with my own wet eyes. She looked horrible, and yet so beautiful at the same time. Her coat would need a good cleaning, but that was the least of my worries. Without a word, she sits next to me, not making eye contact as she looks off into the woods. I can only look at her, wishing to hug her tightly and never let her go again. But I hold back, knowing that it would be too sudden. Finally, she is the first to speak. I heard you. Her voice then got quiet as she whispered, and I'm sorry too. I simply smiled through my tears. Her stubborn attitude was still showing as she always had difficulties apologizing. Dashie, you have nothing to be sorry about. It is my fault, simple as that. It seems my point doesn't get across, as she finally looks at me with a sorrowful face. Dad, do you still love me? Now is the time to act. I reach over and grab her, holding her in a tight hug. Of course, Dashie, I've always loved you. I still love you, no matter what. Not even a small fight such as ours could ever change that. She returns the hug as we sit and cry out together. We continue to apologize, me for the truth, and her for raising her voice and storming out. After some time, the rain subsides while we remain under the tree. Dad? Can we go home now? I need a shower. Bad. I let out a chuckle, and she too laughs as I stand. We make our trip back home. She's smiling again. I am too. I've been giving it some thought, and I think I shall give her birthday present a little early. A ticket to the Indy 500. Yes, I'm taking her to the Indy 500. She can simply sit on some clouds and watch while I'm in the stands. I didn't even have to get her a ticket, but she needs some sort of reminder of her visit. I'm sure she will have a blast, and though I don't expect this to make everything right, I can only hope it cheers her up some. With some time, I'm sure she will relax and settle down about her being in the cartoon. She's a smart mare, and knows she is real, not that made-up pony from the cartoon. I can only help push her to believing that, and hope she does the same to me. There's a point in every parent's life when they have to let their child go, whether it be for the better or for the worst. It must happen at some point. I now sit here in my living room, by myself, sulking over photographs of my distant memories of me and Dashie. On her 20th birthday, I had planned a special outing to go see a flight show. As we prepared to leave, there was a knocking at the door. Never in the years we had lived here had anyone knocked at the door. Hell, we hadn't even made arrangements if someone did show up. I simply told her to go to her room while I took care of it. Once I heard her door shut, calmly and collectively I asked who it was knocking, expecting some stranger, possibly lost on his or her travels. A female voice spoke up, in such an elegant yet attention-grabbing tone. I found myself listening to her with the uttermost attention. She asked if she may come in, a question I'd normally refuse within a heartbeat, and yet something about her voice was reminiscent. I couldn't help but walk over and open the door. Incoming sadness. When I first saw the figure standing on my porch, I wasn't sure if I was dreaming or hallucinating. Standing there was the radiant and majestic Princess Celestia. I was at a loss of words, fighting both emotions of brony excitement, which I had only felt when I first found Dashie, and emotions of sorrow, for I knew what this meant. She stood there another second looking at me. We matched each other in eye level, her body being the size of a nearly full-grown horse. I stepped back and allowed her to enter. What caught me off guard next was the 5 other ponies that followed suit. First, Twilight Sparkle, then the rest of the gang. Applejack, Rarity, Fluttershy, and lastly Pinkie Pie bounced in. Ooh, this is what an alien house looks like on the inside. Oh my, you have a kitchen! I'm starving. Are you starving? I can make us some... She was stopped by Applejack's hoof. Easy there, Sugar Cube. We're just here for a rainbow, so we ain't got no time for any eating. Applejack's stomach growled. No matter how hungry we are. I still wasn't sure how to completely react to all this, but not wanting to be rude, I offered some leftovers. We have some leftovers from dinner last night. You're more than welcome to some. Pinkie took that as an okay and ran into the kitchen with much vigor. It seemed I did not even need to tell her where anything was. She instantly knew where everything was placed. Factor it to either dumb luck or it simply being Pinkie Pie. I choose the latter. I'll go keep an eye on her, Applejack said, walking to join the hyper pony. As she passed, she tipped her hat to me. I was finding it odd the ponies were not more hesitant around a creature such as me. Then again, the same could be said for myself, but having Dashie for 15 years, I grew used to having such a thing around me. Now I have 5 other ponies and a full-sized goddess horse looking at me with the same amount of curiosity that I held for them. There was a moment of silence as I watched the 2 mares enter my kitchen and begin to rummage through my fridge. I'm quite surprised, Celestia began. I had expected a little more resistance to us entering. Why, I know who you all are. Celestia nodded. Ah, so you know then. That you are fictional characters from a children's TV show, then yes. Otherwise, why you are all here, I've no clue. The last part I lied, hoping to keep my mind at ease. I knew the reason, but I wanted to ignore it. Oh, I think you do know. My heart fell into the pit of my stomach. I did know, and she was straight up to the point about it. During all these years I had anticipated this moment, but as time drug on, that thought slowly dispelled until it was just nothing more than a minor nip in my mind. That's when it always happens, you know, when everything is finally perfect and you don't have to worry anymore. Excuse me, sir, Twilight began, but from what we could figure out, Rainbow Dash should be here. Is she? I looked at the purple mare. I wanted to tell her no, but I knew it was fruitless. She's upstairs in her room. In her room? Rarity asked, surprised. Yes, Dashie's in her room. I wasn't sure who was knocking and I didn't want her to be spotted. Dashie, my, you're that friendly with her already? Rarity continued. I wanted to punch that pony so hard right then. How she responded insulted me. Friendly? That's not even the beginning of it. And I should be asking you ponies as to what the hell you did. Celestia raised a brow, taken back by my change of tone. You see, my student, I know who she is. Get to the chase. I was very short with her. As furious as I was, I wanted to know why they'd send Dash as a filly to some other world. Twilight bit her lip, as her teacher continued. Yes, of course. Ahem. She was working on a spell to help the weather team with some storm development. Well, they made a slightly too large of a storm, and when Twilight used her magic to try and dispel it, it shot a lightning bolt meeting her magic. Rainbow Dash was unfortunate enough to be within reach of the blast, and it engulfed her and sent her to, well, here. So we are here to retrieve her. Simple enough, I'd imagine. Before I could answer, Dashie called from her bedroom. Dad, is everything all right? That second, my heart stopped beating as I looked from pony to pony. Each one's face was in pure shock and confusion. They'd recognized the voice of their Rainbow Dash, but she said Dad. Excuse me, Sugar Cube? Applejack started, returning from the kitchen. Did I just hear Rainbow call you Dad? Before I could answer, Celestia started up again. Do you care to explain? I was lost. So many things were running through my mind at once. There was only one thing I could do, and I had to do it. But I knew I wouldn't like it. Go into the living room and make yourselves comfortable. I'll be right down with her. I didn't allow a response. I turned around and walked up the stairs slowly. Dad? Yeah, Dashie, I'm coming up. I looked back down to the group of ponies as they watched me ascend. We need to talk. So that's why I did what I did. I told her who was down there, and that they were here to take her back. She had seen the cartoon every so often after some time, and found the wacky adventures entertaining. She had given up any thought that the Rainbow Dash in the show was her, and only viewed it as another cartoon. As I talked to her and explained that those very ponies she didn't believe in were downstairs, she brushed me off with some laughs. She didn't believe me, and thought I was playing some joke on her, so I took her down into the living room. Oh, God. I'm going through this again. Dashie! Pinky shouted, jumping onto her cyan friend. Dashie was quick to shove the pink pony off. Hey, get away from me! She was taken back by the sudden amount of ponies filling our living room. They all looked at her with worried expressions as to why she shoved her closest friend away. Pinky's cotton candy mane went straight as she looked in confusion. You don't recognize me, do you? No, or any of you, Dashie continued. It hurt me in so many ways. I knew that these were her friends, but so many things have happened differently that she didn't know the truth fully, and neither did they. So I had to explain it to them. I started. Dashie, take a seat, please, so I can talk to them. She did just that, in a recliner. The entire time she looked at all the ponies who occupied the couches and center rock in front of the fireplace. It was time, but first I had to start with a question. How long ago was she sent over here? The question caught them off guard, but Twilight cleared her throat as she spoke. About 15 days ago. Why? I was speechless. 15 days ago? Shit, she's been with me for 15 years. That means a day in their world meant a year here. Well, I continued, it's been a lot more time than that here. How long? Twilight asked. 15 years. All the ponies besides Celestia had their mouths agape. That don't explain why she don't know us, Applejack said. Well, that's the thing. When I found her, she was a filly. Come again? For my math, I think she was no older than 4 or 5 years old. Now Celestia looked surprised. You mean to tell us that you have been taking care of Rainbow Dash for 15 years since she was a small filly? She asked. I simply nodded and looked over to Dashie, who wore an expressionless look on her face. Well, she is... I started, but I couldn't hold back my tears any longer. I know it's not true. God, I wish it was, but... I understand the dad now makes sense, Celestia cut me off, holding a stern look about her face. She was thinking, trying to piece together in her mind what had possibly happened. I chalked it up to the magic. Being unstable possibly reverted her age. For a few moments it was quiet, besides the breathing of 7 ponies and myself. Finally, it was Dashie who broke the silence. So, what's supposed to happen now? I looked at the princess, trying to read her face. No matter how good I had gotten at reading Dashie's face, Princess Celestia had the best poker face I had ever seen. I had no clue what she was thinking or feeling at the moment. Well, it's quite simple, Twilight. Celestia looked up to her pupil, who instantly perked up hearing her name. Do you still remember that memory spell from the Discord incident? Twilight simply nodded as she stood from the couch and hopped onto the floor. I knew what was going on, what Celestia had in mind. She wanted Twilight to either erase her memories and start from anew, or possibly, I hoped she just simply wanted to give Dashie her memories of her friendships and time in Ponyville. I wasn't sure what to do. I felt it was right. I knew it was right and needed to be done. I had been telling myself that for 15 years as I waited for this moment. But there was something I needed to say before it happened. These ponies were going to take my Dashie away, and I had some words to speak before that could happen. No, wait, please, I started. Twilight stopped and looked to the sun goddess. Just give me a moment with her, please. All I ask, since this is the last time we'll see each other. I had given up holding back my tears, and at this point was openly crying. The ponies could tell I was hurting, and Dashie didn't look to be faring too well either. So figuring it wasn't good to prolong the inevitable, I walked over to the chair Dashie sat in, knelt down to meet her eye level as I spoke. Dashie, my little Dashie, I love you with all my heart. You have done wonders to open me up from the man I once was. I had to pause a moment to settle down. You have brought me so much joy in my life that I can't possibly ever thank you for. At this point, Dashie too had begun to cry. That only made it worse for me. These 15 years we've had together, talking, playing, flying, all those have been so special to me. I just want you to know that I will forever love you. It doesn't matter if we aren't biologically related or of different worlds. I don't care whatever you may think of me, or if you even remember me, but right now, you're being my Dashie. I want you. I poked her on the chest to physically show I was talking to her. To know that fact. If there ever is a problem that happens and you need me, don't hesitate to find a way to get me, okay? I tried to laugh, passing the last part off as a joke. It worked, only slightly, as we both continued to cry. I could also hear some sniffling from behind me. I could only picture Pinkie Pie crying much like she had at the end of the second episode in Season 1, after Luna and Celestia had been reunited. Do I have to go to Daddy? It had been a few years since she has actually called me Daddy. Most of the time it was simply Dad or Pops. It felt good, knowing she still cared for me enough to call me Daddy, much like the first time she had said it to me so many years ago. I simply nodded my head as I stood up. Before I could fully grasp my balance, she jumped up onto me and hugged me tightly. I could feel her tears on the back of my neck, and I returned the embrace. It's your actual home, Dashie. You don't belong here. You need to go back where you belong. I belong here, with you. It hurts so much to say, but I had to keep her convinced that this was the right thing to do. No, you don't. You are limited here, only able to fly around the house. You have no friends or other ponies to relate to. I was only taking care of you until this time would come, but I never thought it would be this painful. It remained quiet for a few more minutes as we held each other tight. She didn't fight back, or wanted to resist what was happening, which told me that she knew as well what must be done. I love you, Daddy. And I love you too, my little Dashie. We separated as she lowered herself to the ground. At this point, all the other ponies had tears flowing, even the goddess herself. She had seemed quite smug about knowing what had happened, the time difference and such, but it was evident that the age difference was a shock. She most likely had expected to find a 35-year-old Rainbow Dash, but instead found my 20-year-old Dashie. Twilight stepped closer to Rainbow Dash, sniffling once before her horn glowed. I knew what was coming. It hurt so much, but I knew it was right. It was what had to happen. For her, for her friends, and in a twisted way, for me. No, I could know she was actually going home, and would be around her friends, and could fly wherever, and whenever she wanted to, without any limitations. She could enjoy her friends' company once more. Wait! I looked from the floor to Dashie as she backed away from Twilight. Before I go, I want to get something. Before any pony or myself could protest, she flew up to her room. She was quick and returned with a shoebox in her front hooves. I wasn't sure if she would be allowed to take anything back with her, and half expected the princess to protect. But she remained quiet, allowing Dashie to quickly write something on a piece of paper and set it on the coffee table. She looked back to me, still crying, but with a smile on her face. I knew she had realized that this was how it must end, and knew I knew that as well. The box, from my guessing, was probably her most cherished item that she kept for if she had to leave. Though it hurt me thinking about it, I hoped she had a picture of us. Then again, I also hoped not. For she would be forced to remember me a world away, and that hurt just as much as everything else. I'm so sorry, Rainbow Dash, Twilight started. I honestly wish there was another way to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this, but... Can't... Dashie started. Can't he come with me? The stuttering in her voice told me she was simply speaking her mind, not actually asking the question. Twilight shook her head, unable to keep eye contact with her friends as she cried before her. Rainbow Dash, Princess Celestia started. He cannot join you in our world, much like how you cannot stay in his. This was all never meant to be, and the world around us was not made to house you. And yet, Celestia looked at me, smiling, then began to look around our living room. All the photos of us together, all her knickknacks and belongings strewn around the room. And yet, something beautiful happened here. Something I cannot explain in full. When I realized where you ended up, I expected the worst. I figured you to be ruined, tainted and tarnished from this world's cruelty. But now, I see it's quite the opposite. That here, this man that has raised you, shows me that you were in good hooves, or hands as it were. Dashie sniffed once, beginning to calm down as Celestia's words sunk in. Celestia then returned to looking at me, still smiling. I cannot speak for you, but from what I see in front of me, the amount of love you both share and have shared together tells me that you raised her as if she was your own, even with the obvious differences. You still raised her unbiased to her species, her origins. You raised her as your own daughter, which only makes this entire ordeal so much worse. I absorbed her words, as well as the other ponies in the room. So I must say to you, dear sir, please do not hold my student accountable for this. It was never her, nor any pony else's intention to cause this much hurt to either of you. If you must blame some pony, I would ask you to blame me. I am the one that helped bring them here, to take Rainbow Dash back to her home, away from here. I just couldn't look at any of them, my heavy breathing breaking down with sobs. My mind was just going on her own, thinking back at all the things Dashie and I did together. I took a deep breath as I spoke. Just how could I blame some pony for sending Rainbow Dash here? I sniffled, then cleared my throat as I continued. I nearly choked up as I searched for the words to express myself. These have been the best 15 years of my life, so if anything, I feel quite the opposite. I wish to thank you, Twilight, and the rest of you. Thank you for what you did, though not intentional. Thank you for all that came out of this. And finally, thank you for all my years, my life, and my love with Dashie. I tried to smile at Twilight between the sobs, but she looked on the edge of tears herself and could only look away before she cried herself. Celestia then stood up from the rug she laid on and walked over to me as I stood.
Hello everybody, make sure to check the description for a link to the fanfic itself and a link to a list of fanfics that I've read and am planning to read. Also make sure to leave your suggestions in the comments below and keep annotations enabled to easily get to the next chapter. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.